large firm, but the lawyer fee is greater than the fee you're claiming.
It is disrespectful.
It is their right.
Yes. A right, the right that someone has. All our rights exist in context.
What is the context of a second medical opinion?
Because you're disrespecting the process.
No.
Jesus, this is common sense, man.
Any situation which you seem to do, you're just dealing with Afro-Guyanese issues. If one, you can't bring and pull the leaders of the African community together, you're failing. And if two, you can't put forward a vision, a blueprint, and a plan for African Guyanese, you're failing as well. If one, you can't bring and pull the leaders of the African community together, you're failing. And if two, you can't put forward a vision, a blueprint, and a plan for African Guyanese, you're failing as well.
Pleasant Wednesday evening to you. This is the Freddie Kissoon show. Unfortunately, Leonard Craig has not turned up, but the show has to go on. So I think there are thousands of people that look to see what's happening in the program. So I have to carry it alone. I've carried it before and it worked. And let's see if it will work this time. There is so much to say in this country, so much to say that I have told all my editors of the newspapers that I have worked with while sitting down informally chatting that I could do 2 columns a day because of the amount of disturbing, interesting, intriguing, unacceptable, fascinating stuff that goes on in this country. It goes on all the time. So I'm going to try for the next hour to keep your company and hope you appreciate what I have to say. If you don't, we've never edited the comments. From the time this program started 3.5 years ago, people say all kinds of nasty things, but that comes with the territory. And if you adversely react to that, those persons won. Those persons have got to you. I mean, I don't really give a damn. And you shouldn't about what people say to you. You don't carry a plate to them. They don't know how you lived. They don't know how you kept your family together. They don't know how you supported your children. They don't put gasoline in your car. So if they say Freddie Kissoon is a madman, I simply could not be bothered. So thanks for being with us. I will carry you through the next hour, and there is so much to say. And I want to start by addressing the government of Guyana, and maybe by extension the ruling party, because the ruling party has to have a public relations department. There is a lot of fictions. There is a untold number of fictions, very nasty, very immoral, very barefaced, that are thrusted upon this nation. And we are dealing with a generation that is not of the genre, of the quality of the generation 40 years ago. This is the age of social media. So you have to be careful with what is said about you on social media, because social media has a different kind of appeal than in the 1970s when you read the newspaper. Social media is image-based. It's a charismatic man who is a well-known engineer, who's a well-known professor, getting in front of your face and in a charismatic way, talking nonsense, talking idiocy, and you look at it, you're looking at him on your smartphone while you're on the seawall, and you can believe what what he just said. And that is why social media is more important to confront as a government than when it was in the press. Remember now what people say about you. You could be at the dinner table and you just, the five of you at the dinner table saying, hey, listen to what Melissa, but John, what Alfred's saying about Freddie Kissoon, about Anand Lal, about the government. So you have to respond to these things. And I don't think the government is doing a good job at that. There is too much unfair things being said about the government. Now, I have my differences with the government. But I would not get on this program and just unconscionably lie about something the government did not do. There's so many things I disagree with this government. For example, I believe minibus drivers should be allowed to raise their fare. In the context of look what's going on in Guyana, everybody raise their things. Cost of living is going up. I believe speedboat owners should be allowed to raise their fare. I believe disability pension should be much more than what it is. I believe senior citizen pension should be much more than what it is. I don't believe the government, the ruling party, anyone should have anything to do with Dr. Kissoon. Those are some of my disagreements with the government. But I believe the government of President Ali is much different from the rest of the world. I believe he means well, and I believe this government has used our money in a way that has benefited Guyana. This is not to say that it's not benefiting richer people, it's not benefiting wealthy people. That's inevitability. You can't tell, it's stupid to tell the government, stupid for you to say, this is an oil economy, and you see them people that own all them property, waterfront property, of which they're getting, you can't stop that. If it's an open economy with investment, a waterfront man, a man with a waterfront property is going to rent it for millions a month, and he's going to take that millions he get and for the investor, and he's going to become super rich. How could you prevent that? It's very difficult to prevent that. So you cannot deny that other people are not benefiting immensely from the oil economy, but the poor, the low-income people over the past 5 years have benefited, especially in the field of education and the Georgetown Public Hospital and the state medical system. We tend to, you know what it is if you didn't have those services at the state medical system, where poor people will find that money from. So what's my point? My point is, I believe this government is doing well. It could do more, all governments could do more. I believe the Guyana government is a democratic government, and we have governance that should be appreciated. And comparing with the rest of the world, we stand tall. Don't tell me about Western Europe. So I started this delivery with, I don't think the government is responding adequately to oceans and mountains, a plethora of criticism that are just barefacedly and immorally fictional. And what President Biden did, and this government should follow him. President Biden, when he was president of the US, was facing so much of nastiness from Fox News that he had a department called Disinformation Board. And what the Disinformation Board did, it put all the disinformation that Fox News and other people were saying, and the government responded to it. There is need for that. And it either should be a department within the office of the president, and they get a very good social media platform daily, and they get a group of young people, young, talented women and men, and they sit down and item for item, they reply to David Hines, they reply to Alisa Chotts, reply to the usual suspect, people like Nigel Westmos, Melinda Janke, what have you. Because these people keep banging away. And all you have is myself, Leonard Craig, Joel Bagwandin, occasionally Dr. Randolph Prasad, Randy Prasad, but he's very busy. He's pro-chancellor. He's head of the National Defense Institute. But you need a school of people to run a disinformation board counter, because there is too much going on. And I think the government is so busy that the government feels that, man, people don't believe them. There's a lot that people don't believe. But you can't let even that, you can't let that miasma, that waste seep into even one mind. The role of the government is to keep people informed. There's just too many nasty things going around on social media. And it's not going around by some uneducated laborer. It's the usual suspect. It's people, the mulatto Creole class intellectuals, people who are writing and saying things that are just abominable. And I am going to show you some of those things in front of the camera, and I'm going to give you more examples. Just let me take a bottle of water. I need to talk to you about this bottle of water thing. People have told me why you use bottle, why you don't use glass. I'll come to that. I am not the type that copy from other people. But let's talk about things that are so blatantly wrong, that the young people of this country need to have a counter narrative. Now, I'm going to read for you. I'm going to read for you an advertisement. I'm going to put it up so you can see the headline there. Good. It says, "Thank you, Starbuck News," from civil society. It is signed by 128 signatures. Let me read for you what this advertisement said. "Starbuck News carried our news and views, ranging from solidarity with Palestine and outrage against the genocide in Gaza and Sudan." I'm going to read that again for you because it's an unmitigated, immoral, unethical, nasty lie. This, what is said here, is not factual, it's not true. Let me read it again for you. "Starbuck News has carried our news and views, ranging from solidarity with Palestine and outrage against the genocide in Gaza and Sudan." None of the persons who have signed this advertisement praising Starbuck, none, not one, it's 128. Now, please look at me. Not one wrote anything about Israeli terror in Gaza for 2.5 years that it's been going on. Not one of these persons here penned a letter in any of the newspapers decrying what Israel is still doing in Gaza. So how could they say that about themselves and also say it about the newspapers which didn't carry? Now here I'm going to read my response. This is my response in my daily column for the Chronicle. I'm going to show you it up there. Good. Let me read. Let me respond to that lie. And there's so much more that we have to cover before the hour is over. I'm replying now. Of those 128 signatures, none ever published even one word denouncing genocide in Gaza and lamenting the Israeli terror against the Palestine people. My job is to read the newspapers. I have read every newspaper every day since Israel began killing the Palestinian people. I repeat, none of those 128 signatures ever published even one line about Gaza, even after 2.5 years of genocide. I continue. Here is a list of events Starbuck News ignored since the bombing began 2.5 years ago. There were 2 public marches that took place on the Square of the Revolution with speeches after the marches. They were sponsored by the Guyana Committee for Palestine, headed by Halim Khan, former head of Region 3 Chamber of Commerce. At one of the events, Kaichor News publisher Mr. Glenlal was there. Kaichor reported on the events. There were 2 public symposia at Square of the Revolution. Former President Donald Ramatar spoke and Palestine ambassador to Guyana. A picket in solidarity with Palestine was held outside the conference center during the visit there of former Prime Minister of the UK, Tony Blair. The Palestine ambassador to the UN held a talk at the Marriott Hotel on the genocide. The mayor of Georgetown offered a comment during question time. For 3 months, a lone figure named Shamal Zamaluddin held a one-man picket in support of Palestine at the junction of Dowden Street and Vincentian Road. The Newsroom Media House featured his bravery. I repeat, Starbuck News did not carry any of these events. Months after the bombing started, through the initiative of the then ambassador of the EU here, Mr. Van Ness, Starbuck News interviewed Israel's ambassador to the UN, in which the most basic requirement of an interview were abandoned, and Starbuck News made the ambassador look good. Starbuck News never ran a front page story on the genocide, contrary to Kaichor News that did 10 front page stories. Could you imagine this? Let me read again. Could you imagine what 128 persons said about themselves and said about the Starbuck News? I read for you. It carried our news and views ranging from solidarity with Palestine and outrage against genocide in Gaza. That never happened. That never happened. Now, the 28 persons, the 23 persons and 5 organizations that placed that ad in the Kaichor News, praising themselves and praising the Starbuck News. Even if you miss it in the Kaichor News, you know what those people do? They put it on their Facebook page. They stream it. So even if Kaichor News readers, which is very small, missed it, thousands of people would see it. Thousands of people would see the lies told by those people. I have just read for you the series of events we had in solidarity with the Palestinian people in this country, and Starbuck News never carried it. Ladies and gentlemen, that's just one of the things that took place in this country that needs to be confronted. I have just confronted it. Those are the things that go on in this country every day. So you realize there may be young people, young Guyanese, reading the Facebook page of the usual suspects, Van der Rasdik, Alisa Chotz, Janet Bulkan, Danuta Rasdik, Nigel Westmos, Elizabeth Dean Hughes, Gerard Ramsarup. I know Gerard very well. Gerard never wrote anything about Palestine, and for the past 5 years probably wrote one letter in the Starbuck News. How could he have signed that? But if we don't have a school of talented people to counter this kind of conspiracy, it would seep into people's mind. That is why people like James Bond and Leonard Craig and Joel Bagwanin, they are necessary because you bring them on the program and they're able to counter the nonsense that has spread about the Guyana government, critics of the opposition, and other people. Now, let's take something that has been, I read in Facebook. This is Wednesday, I read it Monday. And if you don't reply, these people end up fooling people. I was talking to Dr. Nanda Gopal at the exit of Memorial Gardens in the Lerapente Cemetery for the funeral of Dr. Rupert Truknarain. And we were blocking the exit. So a Member of Parliament, Amanza Walton Deserve, had to pass between me and Dr. Gopal. And when she was passing, she said to me, you know, you have my number. You know how to call me. You know you can call me. When you write things about me that, well, she said she didn't like what I wrote about her. And I tell you what I wrote about her. You should contact me. And she said, what she said, I said to her, that is open to interpretation. I wanted to know that is her opinion. But that's Amanza Walton saying that when I write about her, I should contact her. I have no intention of doing that for one fundamental, basic, journalistic, intellectual reason. Miss Amanza Walton Deserve is a parliamentarian who makes pronouncements on social phenomena, social developments, national events every day. Those are the interpretations of politicians. Academics and editors then take what they say and comment on it. And that is what I've been doing my whole life in my 38 years as an academic, writing in all the newspapers in Guyana. So when politicians say something, and they say things every day, you have to pick up the phone and call 3 parliamentarians from the PNC, 3 parliamentarians from WIN, 3 cabinet ministers, because they say things, and for you to comment on that, you have to seek their comments. No, their pronouncements in themselves warrant commentary, warrant analysis. So, what's the first thing? What's the thing that annoyed Amanza Walton Deserve? And then I'll come to something else that I'll be writing about her. And I don't see the need for a comment because what she said can stand on its own and can be the recipient of a rebuttal on its own. Now, she said on a Facebook post that we've got to fight in this country because the PPP has captured the election machinery. The PPP is in control of GCOM election machinery. So I wrote a column, I do a daily column in the Chronicle. Nigel West must say I use the Chronicle just to show you how, just let me digress a bit, just to show you how unreasonable these people. The Chronicle gave me a space to write and attack people. He didn't say that the Starbuck News gave Christopher Ram and G.K.H. Lal the same opportunity that they gave me, that they gave Janet Bulkan. But Chronicle gave me that, And that's a problem. Anyway, I did a column on what Amanza Walton Deser said, that the PPP captured the election machinery. She said that 5 months after the general election. So I wrote a response saying that was stupid and idiotic and is absolutely foolish, because the election results showed that the PPP increased its votes from the last election by 9,000. If you capture the machinery and you in control of the machinery, 9 should be 19 or 9 should be 29, because you in charge of the machinery and you're giving yourself votes. That's number one. Number two, the PPP increased its votes in Region 3 from 2020 to 2025 by 214. So you, Region 3 West Coast, Essequibo Islands, which contain vast amount of PPP supporters, Lenora, Breeding Hoop, all those West Coast villages, Metamazon. The PPP is in charge of the election machinery, held an election in 2025, and sat down in some secret room manipulating the election, because they're in charge of the election machinery, and gave themselves 214 votes more than what they got in 2020. You see, when people say these things, you need to protect young people about the nonsense that the PPP captured the machinery, and you can give yourself 214 votes more rather than 2,000 votes more, 200 votes more. How can a ruling party capture the election machinery and give themselves 2,000? The PPP lost some votes in Region 6 from the 2020 elections. So you're running an election that you're in charge of, and your votes decrease in Region 6? What's the answer? The answer is Amanza Walton Deser just sprouted asinine statements about the PPP capturing the GCOM machinery. When you capture machinery to run an election, you do it like Burnham. And Burnham gave the PPP 19% and he got 81%. And the PPP got about 10 seats in Parliament. Does that make sense? And these people don't understand the damage they're doing to themselves. Aubrey Norton and Amanza Walton Deser are self-destructive people. Now, do you know why there was a huge abstention among African Guyanese in the elections? Because Aubrey Norton, the PNC leadership, and Aubrey Norton's sidekick, a man named Henry Jeffrey, very foolish man, for 5 years constantly bang away that the PPP, with the help of the Western powers, manipulated the election and rigged the elections. 5 years, Norton and Henry Jeffrey, the PNC, saying that. Jeffrey kept banging away, and so Jeffrey came up with some jumbie statistics. The man is so ignorant that every region of the 10 region, he left out region 8, I don't know why. Every region, 9 regions in the 2020 election, was rigged from 20% onwards. And in some regions, like region 6, the rigging was 50%. And Jeffrey and his party, APNU, and Norton and his party, the PNC, were the government in 2020. And the advisor to the president in 2020 was a former head of the army, Eddie Collins. The minister of citizenship was a former head of the police force. And according to the PNC, every region, I don't know Henry Jeffrey left out region 8, every region was badly rigged from 20% onwards. Think about, for those of you who are listening and watching this program, think of what went through the psyche of people in 2025. Listen to what they said in their homes. But mommy, but daddy, why am I going out to vote? Remember, my party said that the PPP rigged the election in 2020. And mommy and daddy, you know who's in charge of the government in the country? The PPP. So if they rigged it in 2020, mommy, why am I going out to vote? I'm wasting my time. I could do something else with my time. I am not going to vote. And that explains the high percentage of African abstention in the 2025 elections. Those came from PNC families who said it's a lost cause. I go on and do my work. The workplace give you time to vote. I can take the time and go somewhere else. And you had a high abstention of first registered voters. That's because of what Henry Jeffrey and Aubrey Norton telling them. And now Amanzo Walton is on the stupidity trail. And Norton said, now listen to what Norton said. I'm coming to Amanzo Walton, the second thing about Amanzo Walton. Aubrey Norton gave an interview with a lady named Svetlana Marshall in a podcast called Sources. And he said, the PPP rigged that thing. The PPP is unscrupulous. And as the interview went on, you know what he said? You know the PPP was badly rejected in this election. Now, that's the leader of a party. Please don't take my word for it. Go on the internet and search for Sources by Svetlana Marshall interviewing Aubrey Norton. And this is what Norton said in that program. The election was terribly rigged. The PPP is unscrupulous in rigging elections. And as the interview went on, he said, I don't know what the PPP is talking about. You know, there was widespread rejection of the PPP in this election. How in heaven's name you can reconcile those two? So, Amanzo Walton got up and sprouted that insipidity about the PPP capture the GCOM machinery. And I wrote a column about that. And so at Rupert Rupnarine funeral event, she met me and said, well, she didn't agree and think I should have contacted her. Well, I am going to write something about what Amanzo Walton said in a few days coming. What did she say? Now, you have to have these counters. If you don't have these counters, I keep saying in my columns and on this program, young minds can be fooled. Here is what Amanzo Walton said. Well, not said. She appealed to the opposition to stop infighting. I think she's talking about WIN and the PNC. That for the sake of Guyana, you have to come together. You have a government that you have to fight. And that she's appealing to the oppositions to unite. And look, do you know who is saying that? Amanzo Walton Desert is saying that from a party she belonged to called Forward Guyana, which consists of 3 parties. And after the election was announced, Amanzo Walton Desert and her colleagues in her party Forward Guyana went into disintegrating mode. 2 senior members of her party accused her of reneging on agreement that the 1 seat that Forward Guyana got would be shared among the 3 parties. And so Darwin Best and Francis Bailey, who's a well-known small businessman, he's anti-government, very much anti-government, but I buy my honey from Francis Bailey. I have known Francis Bailey a long time before he ever dreamed of entering Parliament. I've been buying Francis Bailey honey before we ever dream of entering politics. And I don't think I should stop because he supports, he criticizes the government, and I support the government. And Francis Bailey and Darwin Best have been terrible in their condemnation of Amanzo Walton Deserve, that she reneged that it will be 2 years for one party, 2 years for another, and 1 year for VPAC, the party of Darwin Best. And so it's going on, the infighting is going on, and Francis Bailey said on his Facebook page that Amanzo Walton Deserve said she's finished with the matter, but he wants her to know that he ain't finished. For the next 5 years, he going after her. And this lady is saying that the opposition should stop the infighting. But the infighting is going on in her own party. The infighting is taking place in her own party. So, those are the kinds of things you need to see, the rebuttals. That is why I'm saying the ruling party need to have a rebuttal program on Facebook. Or the office of the president has to have what President Biden once had, a disinformation board counter. So when these things come up, your detractors, the terrible people in civil society that criticize the government, you need to have these counters. I have never seen anything from the government. I saw it from GCOM. I've never seen anything, and GCOM really put Transparency International, Guyana chapter, and Guyana Human Rights Organization in its place. But I've never seen the ruling party, the PPP, responded. And I've never seen the Guyana government responded. And the Guyana government should respond, although the Guyana government doesn't participate in elections. Governments don't participate in elections. But the Guyana government is headed by a political party. The Guyana government has a political section which is called the ruling party. That party makes policies for the government. So, what did the Guyana Human Rights Association said, joined by Transparency International Guyana chapter and Red Thread, that the election 2025 was very controversial because there were some controversial things, like Commonwealth citizens arriving in busloads to vote. But they were smart not to say Indians and Bangladeshis. So they made accusations against the 2025 elections for 2 reasons. Commonwealth citizens were seen voting, and busloads of people were transported to the polling station. The absurdity of that is enormous, and GCOM, the PRO lady in GCOM, really did a fine. It's one of the finest PR performance I have seen in my life, and I'm a dinosaur. I've been around a long, long time. The public relations officer of GCOM, her first name is Yolanda, did a wonderful reply to the scurrilities of Red Thread, Guyana Human Rights Association, and Transparency Institute Guyana chapter. So hear what the lady said. The lady said that it's perfectly legal for Commonwealth citizens to vote in Guyana. Commonwealth citizens vote in Commonwealth countries around the world. But here is the other part of the conspiratorial mentality of the mulatto Creole class in this country and a group of people I call the usual suspects. There is a pandit in this country who's a businessman. That man have hundreds and hundreds of acres of coconut estates. He exports coconuts. There is a another businessman that has vast agricultural acres and he's into agriculture. You know who are the employees of those business people? Bangladeshi and Indians who have been here 5 years. So they're domiciled here. They have no intentions of going back. Under the law, if a Commonwealth citizen can prove that they want to make Guyana their home, they're given nationality papers. Those people could vote. But what was the problem of them arriving in busloads? Because there are about 40 of them working on one coconut estate. So the man just hired 3 minibus and put his employees in it to go and vote. How is that rigged in election? How is that controversial? This country has 1 million people since the last census, and they asked hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, running into thousands of legitimate people of foreign lands working here. And in those thousands, there are Commonwealth citizens that voted 50 years ago, voted 40 years ago, voted 30 years ago, voted 20 years ago, voted 10 years ago, and voted 5 years ago. And it is legally, it's a legal impeccability. They can vote according to the Constitution. And before the results could be announced, the Guyana Human Rights Association, the Starbuck News Starbuck News likes that organization. Transparency International, Guyana chapter, the name Transparent, and it's the people put their workers transparently in the vehicle and send them to vote. And then Red Thread, which has become defunct Thread, because Red Thread don't exist. They said that the election was controversial. So I have not seen, except for the GCOM PRO, I have not seen anyone from the PPP or from the government. We bought that nonsense from Red Thread, the Guyana Human Rights Association, and Transparency International. Do you know we have one of the weirdest countries in the world? We have 2 organizations. One has the word human rights in it. Another has the word transparency. And you had an opaque election process in 2020, which everything was, everything was, how to use it. There were 5 months of attempt to stop the transparency of the elections. And Guyana Human Rights, the name Human Rights, Guyana Human Rights never said a word about 5 months of rigging the elections. Transparency Institute Guyana chapter never said one word for 5 months, and then suddenly in 2025 they found their voice and said Commonwealth people voted in this election by substantial numbers. Was that legal? And they cast aspersions on the 2025 elections. Red Thread. And imagine that organization has the word human rights in it. And 155,000 votes were discarded by the then chief election officer. And if the world didn't intervene, 155,000 persons would have been denied their right to vote. And Transparency didn't see that there was a lack of transparency in what the chief election officer did. There were 5 different declarations of the 2020 elections. Well, I think Guyana is smiling the past week and a half because this defunct organization called Red Thread, this defunct organization called Guyana Human Rights Association, they are no more. They are no more because the Starbuck News nurtured them. The Starbuck News catered for them. They serve do nothing for no one in society, but they pop up, their press release pop up every week in the Starbuck News. You go to the length and breadth of this country and ask anyone if they heard about the Guyana Human Rights Association. And every week, the Starbuck News carried a press release from the Guyana Human Rights Association. And poor Gerald Pereira, he has a party called Organization for the Victory of the People. He can't get a letter in the Starbuck News. Can't get a letter. But the Guyana Human Rights Association, which does nothing for human rights victims of this country, they're featured every week in the Starbuck News. Well, that is gone because the Starbuck News is gone. But I want to talk about the Starbuck News again, and I'm going to be talking about the Starbuck News again and again because what the Starbuck News did in this country, I just can't imagine as a product of the 70s, that the kind of atrocities this newspaper trusted upon this country, and this country is just silent about it. The kind of apology for Western imperialism, perpetuating pseudo-political theory of Western countries. That was what the Starbuck News served. But most of all, the Starbuck News lost its way and became an opposition newspaper since 2020. And only 3 persons commenting on the closure of the Starbuck News had some critical comments to make. That is Minister Priya Manik-Chan, that said what vicious things that newspaper did to her as the Minister of Education. Clement Rohi, GCOM Commissioner, said, alluded to the fact that these newspapers have been anti-government since the 60s. And then there's a guy who publishes a Caribbean paper called Caribbean Daylight in New York, named Anand Boudram. Those are the only 3 persons who said, but Starbuck had its faults. No other person, not one other person, have come up and said, but this paper was unreasonably and insanely hostile to the government. It was like an opposition newspaper. Now listen to what Ralph Ramkaran wrote. And Mr. Ralph Ramkaran is like an icon in Guyana. The man was Speaker of the National Assembly. The man served had a gigantic presence in the PPP. And he wrote to say, without the Starbuck News, we would not have had free and fair elections. And he insulted me. And I take personal objection to that because I won the President Medal at the university as the best graduating student and was denied it until a fight by the academics came up and I eventually got it. And that's because of who I was, a student at UG fighting for free and fair elections. And I won the President Medal in 79. Starbuck News was born 10 years after. The PPP, the WPA, all of those people through blood, sweat, and tears, the Bar Association, a movement called GUARD, we suffered tremendously for the fight for free and fair elections. And Ralph Ramkaran said, if it wasn't for the Starbuck News, we may not have had free and fair election in 1992. And when Mr. Ralph Ramkaran wrote that, I resented it deeply because it was an insult to one of my heroes. One of my heroes is and will always be Jesuit priest and editor of the Catholic Standard, Father Andrew Morrison. If it wasn't for the Catholic Standard, along with the PPP, Janet Jagan, along with Walter Rodney, we would, along with the WPA, we would not have had free and fair elections. And I'm surprised that Mr. Ralph Ramkaran has not just quietly said, I exaggerated there a bit. The Starbrook News, if it wasn't for the Starbrook News, we would never had free and fair elections. So the operator signaled that 8 minutes have left, and I said something on the program that I just want to talk to you about because it's about my personality as a public figure, and it's about my ideology. I have had several comments from people that says, Freddie, on the show, you got a bottle and you're drinking water. And I said, that is my approach. I don't want to adopt other approaches where you have coffee in a cup. And this is what I have said to them. There is a style of jeans in the world today in which I don't know if the operator could get a piece of my trousers here, get at my knee. All hair are toned. All hair are toned. Those are expensive jeans. Can you imagine if a Guyana fashion designer had designed the jeans where there were holes in the knees, holes all over? Sometimes you've seen women's legs. Sometimes you've seen their backsides. These expensive jeans have holes. You know what the world would have said to that Guyanese fashion designer? Some little backwater guy from which country? And he designing a jeans with holes. And do you see how everybody in the world has copied this American thing about holes in your jeans? And they're expensive jeans. That's how we copy from people. So I did a series of programs during the elections for a television station named Ignite Television Station. So the producer adopted a policy. When one of the guests is late, the program continues, and then you take a commercial break and the guest comes in. Well, I have been doing a program 3.5 years, just like that program that I did with Ignite Television. And when the guest is late, the cameras are running and the guests come and sit down. And you see him or her walking, taking the seat next to us. I see nothing wrong with that. I am not going to adopt outside and other foreign people's perspective and approach. I see nothing wrong with someone that is late for a studio program coming in and walking into the studio. Why do we have to go to commercial break? What is so wrong about that? I don't want to have a cup of coffee in the studio when I have my guests. I am quite comfortable with a bottle of water. And guess what? If the Americans or the Europeans now adopt the style where they have a bottle of water and the guest and the host are talking and they're drinking, we in this society and in foreign society, you can see all the talk shows, all the students have bottle of water. Naipaul said we don't think, we're not original. You know, if you go to any European magazine, any literary music department, and you ask those people to review music and the best singers, do you know Bob Marley would probably be maybe second to last on the list? Do you know Bob Marley was a creative genius that that composed music and made songs that when you are reviewing music, it's supposed to be right up there? But they don't know about Marley because the way they come up and universities that they were educated in. So I am putting Marley. Let them put the musicians they know. We know Marley and we know his genius. You know, when I was at university, everybody talking about these books that the Americans, there were two books that were very, very popular in the world. Catcher in the Rye and The Great Gatsby. And why we think Catcher in the Rye and The Great Gatsby are good books? I read those two books and they're far, far, far from being plausible work. They're just ordinary work. But the Americans thrust it down, forced that down our throat. Catcher in the Rye and The Great Gatsby. And all those Indian literature, all those, you know, do you know Arundhati Roy? It's probably hardly known in American literature departments. That lady is one of the finest novelists in the world today. So, the West will adopt, bottle, when they have their talk shows, and then we're going to copy it. So I said to people, once I am in charge of the Freddie Kissoon show, the late guests will come, walk right in the studio, walk right in where the thing is being filmed, and take his or her seat. And I will have my bottle. I don't want coffee. When I go home, I will have my coffee. I drink water on the Freddie Kissoon show. I don't want to wait for the specialists in France, in the United States, to adopt bottled water on their program and then all of us copying it. You know, I don't like Naipaul. I don't like Naipaul because I think Naipaul had problems with his culture. I think he was running from himself, running from his color. But Naipaul, no matter you may not like a talented person, they may have some valid theories about their outlines, like that guy who got killed, Charlie Kirk. Charlie Kirk is one of civilization's most obnoxious person. No one in the world should have any appreciation for Charlie Kirk. And so he was assassinated in the United States. But Charlie Kirk said something that, you know, you have to give him credit for. He said, Israel is leading the United States. A powerful, great country like Israel is playing second, you know, like a toy to Israel. So, Naipaul said that we in the Caribbean are not creative. So, when I did this election program for Ignite Television, the producer said, no, don't walk in while the program is going on. You have to have a advertisement break and then the guests would come in. I don't believe in that. I believe when those guests were late, they should have come straight onto the stage. And then you have coffee in teacups. That's fine. But anyway, the operator signaled that our time has come. I'd like to conclude by saying that unfortunately, Leonard Craig was not here. I am not going to, Leonard Craig and I have been friends a long time, but unfortunately he left me in the hot seat. Program was just left stranded, so I had to carry it on my own. I hope he doesn't do that in the future. But I don't know how I did. We will see when the viewership is done if I did well. I did it a couple of times. I carried it on my own. And I'd like to do that again because there's so much things to be done, to be said, to counter what is being said about the place. I mean, I don't think David Hines has any following. But you have to protect David. You have to bet even at one mind from David Hines. I saw a program that he's calling for revolution. So who's going to make the revolution? Takumo Gonse got charged, and when he was walking in the station, when he looked over his soldier, there was no one. Who's going to make the revolution? But on that comical note of David Hines calling for revolution, in Guyana. We will see you on Friday evening. Thanks for being with me. I do hope I did well as a solo act, and hope I passed the test. Thanks for being with us. As I always say, catch you later.